Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
For tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we recap the latest news in baseball. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
I am Ben.
And man, we had a heck of a series between the Chicago Cubs and San Francisco Giants. It was a heck of a series, especially Game 4 last night. It almost turned into Game 5, but the Cubs rallied back, down 3 runs in the 9th inning. And of course, as always, the Giants bullpen blew it again.
Yeah, we've had really a whole entire week worth of craziness here in MLB with the whole postseason, which we're going to talk about for the whole entire show.
Pretty much today, yeah.
Yeah, our first segment, we got to talk about the the Cubs and the Giants series, which concluded last night. As you mentioned, Giants have a 5-2 lead going into the 9th inning. Teams in Major League Baseball with a 3-run or more lead in the playoffs. 824-3, and the Giants give up 4 runs in the 9th inning and lose to the Cubs 6-5. The Cubs advance to their second straight National League Championship Series. They will await the winner of tomorrow's Game 5 between the Dodgers and Nationals. We'll talk about that in our second segment. But sorry about that. But last night, yeah, definitely. For Giants fans, for the players, got to be let down yet again by that bullpen, which has been their Achilles heel the entire year long.
And we talked about this Giants team plenty of times and how we wrote them off in September and then how all of a sudden they got hot at the right time and it became an even year. So maybe this is another potential Giants run. And it looked that way in the wild card game when Connor Gillespie, out of all people, hit that game-winning home run in the wild card game against the Mets. And then, of course, Connor Gillespie has a big hit again in Game 3. That put the Giants ahead, 4-3. And, of course, Sergio Romo blew that lead in Game 3, and they almost lost that game as well. But you got to have to feel bad for Matt Moore and Johnny Cueto in this series. Johnny Cueto pitched to Jim in Game 1, which was a solo home run from Javier Baez, who had a heck of a series defensively and offensively, by the way.
He's a great young prospect.
He had a heck of a series, and he had a heck of a game last night as well. And Matt Moore, you got to feel bad for him as well. You know, coming from the Tampa Bay Rays and the trade deadline, pitches to Jim, went over 120 innings, 10 strikeouts. He just absolutely shut down this Cubs lineup down. It looks like we were heading for a Game 5 matchup with John Lester versus Johnny Cueto, and maybe Bumgarner would have probably pitched in that game as well. But, man, you got to feel bad for Cueto and Moore in this series. They were just lights out, and yeah, you just got to feel bad for those guys because the bullpen basically for the Giants lost them this series. And we knew that was their Achilles heel all along.
Absolutely. You mentioned Moore. He went 8 innings last night. He gave up 1 earned run, the home run to David Ross. And then the last night's game was kind of strange. You saw a lot of things that you don't normally see. You saw 2 errors from Brandon Crawford, who's a Gold Glove winner at shortstop for the Giants, one of the best defensive players in all baseball, let alone shortstops. But he has 2 errors, both of them resulting in run scoring. So really uncharacteristic there. In a way, I kind of look at the 9th inning last night. As soon as Chris Bryant got that leadoff hit, I was like, oh, here we go again. And then Javier Lopez comes in to face Anthony Rizzo, and he gives up a walk. And then Sergio Romo comes in to face Ben Zobrist. He gets a double. I realize hindsight is 20/20, and Matt Moore at 120 pitches, you can't expect him to go in the 9th inning. You just really can't. But I feel like maybe you could say with Bochy deciding to go like righty against righty, lefty against lefty with Law, Baez, and with Romo going in there. I kind of criticize that because you don't have a solid closer, and I realize Santiago Casilla was your closer during the year, and he really, really struggled, and they ultimately just decided to get him out of that role. So I realize with no one really stepping up to be your full-time closer, you kind of have to just make shift with what you have. But I think that maybe only having it with the strategy mindset of you'll face one batter, whether you get him out or not, I kind of think that's getting to these pitchers and kind of affecting their composure. Like they don't even have any trust in me to go the whole inning, face all 3 batters or 3 outs. That I only get to face one guy. Like I better not screw it up. That kind of would get my composure a little down and my confidence down. So I think that kind of played an effect last night because I think you saw it. Derek Law gives up the hit. Then you have Javier Lopez, who's the left-hander specialist, gives up the walk. Ben Zobrist gets a double. I mean, I don't really think that was the best idea. I would have just said, Romo did okay at the end of the year as the Giants closer. I would have said, okay, this is your inning. Like, I realized last night you messed up, but that's last night. Tonight is about tonight.
He had a 3-run lead.
Right,
yeah.
And the same thing. They had a 3-run lead last night, and it's like, okay, now last night was last night. Tonight was tonight. Just get the job done. And I think that kind of got to all these pitchers. The Giants threw 5 different pitchers in that 9th inning alone.
I've never seen that in a ball score in my life. Okay, you got Matt Moore pitching 8 innings, and then you got 5 relievers in a 9th inning. And I know Bochy taking out Matt Moore was kind of questionable, but come on now. He threw 120 pitches, and he had to face Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, and Ben Zobrist. Come on. You can't expect him to pitch a 9th inning against those 3 guys. We've seen how this Cubs lineup has been. And I disagree with, pitching in matchups, and especially in this caliber of a game. I think he just should have went to Romo, and I know he blew the save on Monday, Game 3. But you got to instill some confidence in these guys,
Exactly.
in the most important time of the year.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going with. And then you're in the 9th inning. As far as the Giants go, you had a 3-run lead. You gave up 4 runs. You're just emotionally spent after that. Then you have to go up against Aroldis Chapman, who I realize you got to the night before, but getting to Chapman 2 games in a row is like almost impossible. He throws literally every single pitch last night at least 100 miles per hour. You're emotionally spent after giving up 4 runs. You knew once the Cubs got the lead, the game was over. I really felt like that. And Chapman strikes out the side, so I mean, obviously it was what we said it was. So
yeah. So basically, that San Francisco Giants bullpen is who we thought they were. That's basically it. But you gotta feel happy for the Cubs, sort of way. This team literally looked like it was about to blow a series lead, because when you go into Wrigley Field with Cueto or Bumgarner, you kind of don't really like your chances at that point, especially with the way that the Giants have played in recent years. But unfortunately for the Giants, the even year thing is ending, but they do have Bumgarner, Cueto, Samardzija, and more under contract next season. So I do think the Giants are going to bounce back. They just have to beef up this bullpen. That's all they have to do. And the lineup, I know they don't hit a lot of home runs, but this team hasn't historically hit a lot of home runs anyway. It's built on pitching. So all you have to do is beef up this bullpen, and I think they'll bounce back next year.
Definitely. That was the one thing we kind of looked at the trade deadline when we did our show, was the Giants got Will Smith, who's a reliever, but they didn't get like a real solid closer. And ultimately, that's what came back to haunt them last night. The Giants' hitting is, I look at him kind of like opportunistic. I thought Connor Gillespie was by far their best player of the whole postseason.
Oh, by far.
Hits the 3-run home run to win the game for them in the wildcard game against the Mets.
He even got the Kobe Bryant treatment last night as well.
He was 3 for 3 last night. He played exceptionally well. So I think he's probably someone between him and Nunez over at third base you have a future with. So I think you maybe need to add another hitter that can maybe provide some sort of pop. But then you look at this lineup and you go, okay, if you bring someone in, then who are you taking out? So you kind of have some questions there. But the bullpen is definitely the one thing the Giants need to address. They're still a good team. Kind of fell apart there. And then you mentioned the Cubs. Like, the Cubs, 103 wins, best team in baseball all year long by most people's standpoints.
And they proved it last night.
Strong pitching. They have all the pressure put on them. And then last night, it seemed like they were maybe getting to it. The pressure was getting to them. Really struggled. They had the lead in Game 3, looking to sweep it, and then Aroldis Chapman gives up the blown save. Last night, same thing, losing, and then they come back in the ninth. But it seemed like that pressure was maybe getting to them. We talked about in the show last week that the Giants were the one team that could really challenge the Cubs. Now you have John Lester on even more than full week's rest. You have your whole entire pitching rotation set up for the NLCS, no matter if it's the Dodgers or the Nationals. I gotta like the Cubs, man. They have their whole entire rotation set. This was their toughest test in my eyes,
yeah,
and it almost went 5 games. It probably should have.
Yeah, and I think Game 5 would have been so fun in this series, but unfortunately we're not going to get it. And for the Giants here, Conor Gillespie, remember, he got cut by the White Sox this year. He was out of baseball, and he got signed by the Giants, and originally Gillespie came into the league with the Giants. But you gotta tip your hat to the Giants here with the little moves they made mid-season. Because remember, dating back to Cody Ross, he came out of nowhere. Travis Ishikawa, and now Conor Gillespie. He was pretty impressive in this series, and it's unfortunate that the bullpen was who they thought they were.
Yeah, they definitely let them down last night. Even Game 3, although they did come back to win, went on a lot longer than probably should have, but these things happen. This is the reality, and like you said, they are what we thought they were, and that's what cost them.
And I'm not going to lie, I was ready for another 13-inning game. I'm not going to lie. I had the coffee ready and everything. I was ready for it. You
were up and ready.
I was up and ready. And looking forward, the Cubs are the clear-cut favorite in my eyes because this was the toughest test. And I don't think the Nationals or the Dodgers are going to come close to what the Giants did in the postseason. And I understand that these are better lineups, but looking at recent history here, the Giants they're built for postseason baseball despite the bullpen struggles this year.
Absolutely, and we will be finding out who the Cubs will be playing in the NLCS tomorrow when the Nationals take on the Dodgers in that decisive Game 5. We'll be previewing that, and we'll be reviewing the rest of the series, including last night's game, right after the break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. In the last segment, we were talking about the Cubs' historic ninth inning comeback to clinch the NLCS berth over the San Francisco Giants last night. And the team who they'll play in that series, we have yet to find out, as the Washington Nationals will be at home taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers tomorrow night in a pitching matchup. Rich Hill for the Dodgers.
On short rest, by the way.
On short rest versus Max Scherzer of the Nationals. So this is a pretty good pitching matchup. And Rich Hill is pitching Game 5 because the Dodgers pitched Clayton Kershaw on short rest for Game 4, which I kind of thought was a smart move because if you wait till Game 5, they may not even be a Game 5. But anyways, going to last night's game for the Nationals and Dodgers, the Nationals did tie it up in the 7th inning at 5-5, and Chase Utley singled in the RBI to make it 6-5. And this has been also quite a fun series in my eyes.
Definitely back and forth. It's gone 1-1, 1-1. So, I mean, every team just winning one in a row. No one's winning two and then coming back. Clayton Kershaw pitched, I wouldn't say good last night, but okay. I mean, he went 6 2/3. He gave up 5 runs, 7 hits, 11 strikeouts. So again, we've seen Kershaw with these postseason struggles, his ERA in the series is 6.17 through 2 starts. But at the end of the day, they are winning both games when Kershaw's been on the mound. So I guess you could say you can kind of take a win there, although Kershaw's not playing well. We mentioned last week that if the Dodgers were going to win this series, they have to win when Kershaw's on the mound. And their 2 wins are when he's on the mound. So when you look for tomorrow's game, I got to like the Nationals. You have Max Scherzer on full rest. He hasn't pitched since game 1, so he's on full rest. Rich Hill on short rest. That's who got the loss in game 2. So I got to like the Nats. They're at home, too. I mean, everything just goes well for them. You mentioned Kershaw had to go last night facing elimination, and you're absolutely right. So not surprised there.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised at all. And I think the choice was to go with either Rich Hill or not Javier Baez. The young Julio Urias. I don't know why I said Baez for some reason, because they have a bias on the bullpen in the Dodgers. The Julio Urias or Rich Hill. And you don't want to put that much pressure on a rookie, which I understand, but you still got to have him on your team. And Rich Hill, who is the veteran who came in on the trade deadline, he pitched well down the stretch, but he did struggle in game 2, got the loss there. I don't like the Dodgers' chances right now. I know they had some clutch hitting yesterday, but the bullpen did kind of blow Kershaw's lead last night. And when the game was tied, you just saw that frustration in Kershaw's eyes. You just saw it because, he just can't get over this hump. And Max Scherzer has been pretty good in the postseason in recent history. So I do like the National chances as well because they basically have the better pitcher on the mound. And their lineup just as good as the Dodgers is.
Yeah, Dodgers
not better.
The Dodgers are really that one team that just seemed to can't get over the hump in the playoffs last few years. And I think a lot of that goes to Kershaw. He did give up all 5 runs. He left with the bases loaded, needing just an out. And then between Baez and Alvian, they just could not get it done. He ended up recording all 5 earned runs for the people that were on base, But he left there on short rest. He threw 110 pitches. His arm's probably falling off today. But the Dodgers just that one team that just can't get over the hump. They always lose in the first round of the playoffs the last few years now. And you mentioned Rich Hill pitched well, and of course you're going to throw him in there with his experience over just a young 19-year-old kid. Just literally the future of your team, but not really the present of your team in Urias. So not surprised there. But I got like the Nationals with history, better pitching matchup. The lineups have been similar, as you mentioned, kind of opportunistic. It seems like a lot of these teams are just relying on a couple of guys to really get them some big hits. Justin Turner's had a good series. He's hitting .455 for LA. And then you have Jason Worth and Daniel Murphy really hitting well for the Nationals. And Daniel Murphy, not really surprised there, finished second in the NL batting title. But so I got to like the Nats. I think both teams will score runs, but Scherzer should probably shut LA down over Rich Hill for the Nationals.
And they're at home.
Right.
And Daniel Murphy had that clutch hit that tied up yesterday as well. And you just can't pitch to Murphy in the postseason. You saw last year when he was with the Mets, hitting nothing but home runs, and we're seeing it again. He's just completely a different player than he is in the regular season. And Murphy had a good regular season this year. He was an MVP candidate for most of it.
Right. Are you surprised this series went to 5 games? I figured it probably would have. I like the Nationals in 4. We talked about last week. Are you surprised that it went all 5, though?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I do think the Dodgers were talented enough to go toe-to-toe with the Nationals. They have the lineup in there. But the thing that I am surprised about was how well the pitching was solid enough in the series for the Dodgers, because the Nationals pitching staff, hands down, a lot better than Dodgers pitching staff. It's just no question. And the Dodgers found ways to get to the Nationals starting rotation. They found ways to get them out of the game. Like last night, Joe Ross only went 2 2/3 innings. And Joe Ross was a pretty good pitcher this year for the Nationals. So they found ways to get the pitchers out of the ball game when they needed to.
And then, depending on who wins, obviously goes on to face the Cubs. I think that the Dodgers would actually give the Cubs a better series than Washington. When I look at the Nationals, you look at obviously their ace being Scherzer, and then you look at the Dodgers' ace being Kershaw. Kershaw's a lot better than Scherzer, and he would obviously he's struggled, but he got to go off what he's done in his career. I think he would provide a much more closer game than Scherzer. No disrespect to Max Scherzer. He's a great pitcher, but he's been known to give up a lot of home runs. I feel like with Kershaw and the Dodgers, they would give the Cubs a much better series. I don't think either of those teams will beat the Cubs at all. Like, not at all. I think this series maybe goes 5, no matter who they play. But I think the Dodgers would give them probably a better series.
Yeah, I do agree with that as well. And I think baseball wants Chicago and L.A.
That'd be great. I mean, Washington's not a terrible market, but it's the Dodgers, it's Los Angeles, and it's the Cubs who are everybody's darling this year in baseball. Yeah. So I think you're probably right. But we'll have to wait and see what happens on Thursday.
And we'll definitely have the matchup next week.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have our ALCS already set. We're going to talk about that in the next segment right after the break. But then the NLCS we'll have to wait on tomorrow. We both like the Nationals. We'll have to see what happens. I think we were maybe a little surprised in this series just with how it sort of stood out. 2 teams battling 2-2 even, not so much, but just kind of how the games have gone. They've been a lot more scoring than I would have thought. Every game's been really offensive and not so much pitching standpoint. So
yeah, it was a pretty fun series. It wasn't as fun as the Cubs and Giants though. That series was intense between the Cubs and Giants.
The Cubs and Giants was literally playoff baseball.
Yeah,
that was the definition.
That was literally what playoff baseball was all about. Yeah.
Exactly. So with that being said, we'll take our last break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. Coming out of the break, we will be talking about the ALCS, which will feature the Toronto Blue Jays and the Cleveland Indians.
Just how we drew it up, Ben. Just how we drew it up.
Yeah, I picked literally
the opposite.
Red Sox and the Rangers.
Me too. So, just how we drew it up.
And then both teams actually complete sweeps. Yeah. So
just how we drew it up.
Maybe the other way around. But we'll be right back after the break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. I want to talk to you today about compression gear. Compression gear is popular with professional and amateur athletes everywhere to prevent injuries and for helping heal injuries. Sleeves has the coolest collection of compression gear around. Sleeves carry sizes for women and men as well as kids. Get compression sleeves in over 200 designs to match your teammates and uniforms. Check out the huge collection of styles and sizes or order something custom for your team at Sleeves. Get 20% off plus free shipping on purchases of $50 or more when you use the code BASEBALLPODCAST. Visit Sleeves, that's spelled SLEEFS.com today. That's SLEEFS.com. Sleeves.com.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. And like I said before the break, Ben, the ALCS is exactly how we drew it up.
Not so much. We both liked Boston, who ended up getting swept. We both liked Texas, who ended up getting swept. So just sort of recapping those two series, when you look at the Toronto and Texas series, Toronto absolutely killed them every single game.
It surprised me because I thought Texas was hands down the better team and the better lineup, the better rotation. But to be fair, Texas didn't really get challenged in the second half. They didn't get challenged at all. They were just pretty much the top team. They looked like they were the class, and they didn't get challenged. And I think that really kind of hurt them in a way because you saw Toronto. It literally, I think it took them the last day to make the playoffs. They were getting hot at the right time, and we seen it. And with Cleveland, I did say that they were going to win Game 1, but I have Boston winning the series. And as soon as Cleveland won that first game, they never let back. They had clutch hitting, clutch pitching throughout, and they made all the right moves when needed to. And I'm not going to lie, I was kind of shocked that Cleveland beat Boston because I thought Boston was the second best team in the American League. And now we're one step closer from a Chicago Cubs and Cleveland series.
I think that would be absolutely fantastic. Yeah. But we both like Boston because of their offense. We talked about how the pitching for the Indians was a lot better than the pitching for the Red Sox. And we thought that in this series, the offense would prevail over the pitching. But we were absolutely wrong. The Red Sox got shut out in Game 2, scored 5 runs in Game 1. They did not look good all series. David Price and Rick Porcello both struggled. Those are your best 2 pitchers by far, and they both struggled. So that just spelled as a recipe for disaster. Once they were down 0-2, I really knew the series was over. I thought Boston would win Game 3, at least at home, and then lose Game 4. But obviously we were wrong about that. So we have with Boston losing, we have the end of a career.
Of
David Ortiz.
Yes.
An emotional ending there. He goes back on the mound after the game to sort of wave goodbye to everyone. I'm kind of happy he ended his career at home so he could do it in front of the Fenway Park and Boston Red Sox fans. Really emotional. Tears are shedding. So the end of a great, great career for Big Papi.
And before we go on previewing this ALCS, man, I'm going to miss David Ortiz. He was just one of those players that just loved the game. He was always happy. He was just happy to be there. And I think the one thing I'm going to miss, well, not really miss, they're probably going to still do it, but, on Saturday Night Live, when they have that weekend update, and then when they use David Ortiz, they have Keaton Thompson play David Ortiz. I'm not sure if you've seen this.
Yeah.
But they kind of, make fun of him in a way. He's all, we had a big lunch. I just thought that's always funny.
Yeah. He always does a good job of impersonating.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one thing. He's, just like you mentioned, always a happy person, always really positive. One of those guys that's not really... he took out some lashings on some phones and Gatorade, pitchers in his time, but definitely not one of those guys who's really outspoken and really negative in a negative way. Always really positive. Multiple World Series winner with Boston. So the end of a great, great career for Big Papi. And now you have the ALCS. We have Cleveland with the home field advantage, with Toronto being the wild card team, and we have the Toronto Blue Jays. Just right off the top of my head, I want to pick Toronto because of how impressive they were in their series against Texas. I realize Cleveland was just as impressive against Boston, but you have Toronto being the wildcard team, so they win 2 games in Texas, in Arlington. They absolutely kill Cole Hamels and Yu Darvish, the best 2 pitchers for Texas. And their pitching was okay, but what really stood out to me was their lineup, their offense. Troy Tulowitzki, Jose Bautista, Edwin Encarnacion, all playing really, really well. And then you have Cleveland, kind of I guess you want to say on the American League side, the darlings of the American League, really coming out of nowhere this year. We've talked about them on our show. We featured them. And they're kind of riding high with the whole city, with the exception of the Browns.
With the Believeland? Yeah.
Right, with the Cavaliers winning. So, just looking at the matchups, I want to pick Toronto in this series. I think their offense is playing absolutely outstanding. Marco Estrada is going to be on the mound for Game 1. He pitched great Game 1 in Texas, only giving up 1 run. But something tells me the Indians are going to win just because of Believeland and Cleveland and the fan atmosphere and destiny and whatever you want to call it. But I think Toronto's probably a better team. I think their offense is playing really well. They're pitching well. They looked more impressive to me than Cleveland did against Boston.
I gonna have to go against you here. I got Cleveland winning this series.
Oh, okay.
I think this is gonna go 6 games. I got Cleveland winning 4-2. This is very gonna be entertaining because you got both of these lineups. They were both kind of hot, so to speak. I know the Blue Jays scored a lot more runs in their series against the Rangers than the Indians did against the Red Sox, but Game 1 is at Cleveland. And that leaves them a huge advantage. First 2 games at Cleveland, that is huge for this city. You know how Cleveland sports fans get when their teams are in the playoffs. They get all rowdy. They get all into it. And the fact that Game 1 is at home, it's a huge advantage for Cleveland. Home field advantage for Cleveland in sports is huge. They are so passionate. And they haven't announced their starter against Marco Estrada. And I do think this is going to be a really good pitching duel, whoever pitches for Cleveland. But I have to go with Cleveland here. All the momentum swinging their way. And like I said, we're one step closer to Cleveland versus Chicago. Who would have drove that up?
That would have been absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And you can kind of say, I'll go with the hot team. But both teams coming into Game 1 are on a 6-game winning streak, just in general. And then they come off sweep. So there's really not necessarily a hot team because they're both hot. They're both playing great.
So technically, they're both on a 9-game winning streak, so to speak.
Oh, no, 6 if you include the series. Okay. So they came in to the season, ending the regular season with 3 consecutive wins, both of them. And then they obviously get the sweeps in the divisional rounds. Texas losing to Toronto. Toronto has that extra game against Baltimore, the wild card game. So I don't know. Something tells me Toronto I think their offense kind of carries them. It's again, we're going to have pitching against offense. Pitching 1, in the series with Cleveland against Boston, but the offense won in the series with Toronto versus Texas, although they pitched pretty well too. But the offense is what really stood out. So we'll have to see what happens. Something's got to give.
And you did point out that pitching did win against that Red Sox series. And I do think that Red Sox lineup is a little bit better than Toronto. So that's why I got to give Cleveland the slight edge here, because they got the pitching to do it.
I don't know, man. Something tells me we're going to be.
Come on, man. Believe. Hashtag believe, man. Come on.
I don't know. Something about Toronto just playing so. They looked more impressive to me, beating Texas, who were the best team in the American League record-wise.
I'm not going to argue with that. They looked very impressive in that series. We didn't think they were going to do that well.
I don't know. This series, I feel like it's really even matched. I feel like on the National League side, no matter who plays the Cubs, it'll be a lot more lopsided than this series will. You mentioned 6 games. I think that's a good sort of starting point. Maybe 7, who knows? But I'll take Toronto. I'll take 6 though. Game 6 would be in Toronto.
Yeah.
So
I'll go with Cleveland in 6 games.
Okay, very very interesting. We'll have to see, because one of us is going to be right, one of us is going to be wrong. Unlike we're both wrong in the American League.
Just how we drew it up.
But with that being said, we're going to end this episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. For Jeremiah, I am Ben. We'll be back next week, obviously looking at the Championship League series between the Cubs and whoever they play on the National League side, and the Indians and the Toronto Blue Jays here on the American League side. And we'll have to update you on everything baseball-wise. We've got a lot of great things. Jeremiah, before we end the show, you wanted to say one thing about a person that you hate to talk about, but I actually love to talk about.
Oh, you love talking about this guy.
I do.
And for you guys that have been sleeping under the rock, Tim Tebow is a baseball player now, and he is with the Mets rookie team and the Fall League, I believe. So yesterday, Tim Tebow was signing autographs, and a fan had a seizure literally like right next to him. So Tim Tebow literally put his hand on the fan that was having a seizure and just prayed for him until help came. And I don't know the status on that person with the seizure, but apparently it drew a lot of attention because of that. And that right there is the reason why I can never say anything bad about Tim Tebow the person, despite his play in the NFL and possibly maybe in the MLB. But you cannot say Tim Tebow is a bad person at all because of that.
No, definitely cares. Okay, so we're not sure if the fan had the seizure because he got to meet Tebow, get an autograph or anything, but if that was the instance, who would that be for you? Obviously, I'm not saying, you're going to get a seizure if you meet, like, Buster Posey or whatever, but who would be the one guy that would probably get you the closest to that?
Probably, and it's probably not with baseball. Maybe Kobe Bryant or Jerry Rice. Yeah, those are my 2 favorite athletes on my favorite teams. So I would have to go with those 2. I hope that doesn't happen.
I have met Jerry Rice, and I have not had a seizure, so I'll say that. But
I hope it doesn't. Maybe with Kobe Bryant, no. Maybe.
I don't know. But for me, it'd probably be David Beckham. I absolutely love David Beckham.
You are a soccer guy.
I'm a soccer guy. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I'm a huge soccer guy. I'm one of the co-hosts of the soccer show here at the GSMC Podcast Network. But for me, it'd probably be David Beckham. I absolutely love David Beckham, man. Just a legend of the game. You got to respect him. So.
I do like David Beckham. Now, I'm not really much of a soccer fan like you, but the way that David Beckham played the game, man, it was just incredible.
Yeah, I love David Beckham. But that'd be it for me. So with that being said, we're going to end the baseball show. Again, I am Ben.
I'm Jeremiah.
And we hope you have enjoyed this episode and have enjoyed these playoffs here in Major League Baseball as much as we have. So with that being said, guys, we hope you have a good week. We'll see you next week, and watch some games. There's a lot of good ones.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.